Yo, what is up? Welcome to Crimson Rhythm. I am officially back. It's been a while, but I've been pretty busy with school lately, and I just finished midterms. So that's what's been up recently. Here, today, I am bringing you the Venusian 1 Rhythmic analysis. I gotta say, this is one of my favorite songs from the most recent King Gizzard record, Infest the Rat's Nest. And just because it's a very complex song, but at the same time it's very catchy, very energetic, very groovy. It's interesting, and I'm gonna get into that now. So here goes.
Venusian.
The song begins on these chill 15-beat grooves that fall on and off of each other. The wide pan cymbals emphasize a simple quarter note groove of 15-4, while the guitar plays straight dotted quarter notes, creating a 15-8 riff that resolves to the downbeat every two measures. However, despite how odd and chaotic this groove may sound in explanation, it feels rather normal and quite groovy in experience. Why is this? Well, there's a couple things to look at here. For one, a major aspect of music is the art of syncopation. Just to distinguish the difference, syncopation is not the same as swing. This is not a swung rhythm. The guitar is playing straight dotted quarter notes. There is no attempt to fall before or behind every 3/8 notes. The syncopation lies within every second measure of the riff. Because the guitar is playing 15/8 and the drums play straight quarter notes, the guitar falls an eighth note before the drums on the second measure of the riff. Due to the eighth note syncopation being somewhat difficult to pick up on though, I don't want to make it out to sound like it creates some great tension in the song. However, it does create a small tension that gives us a bit of push and pull before resolving into the downbeat. As humans, we like when there is a push and pull or a back and forth to things. This occurs in our walking, our dancing, head nodding, whatever else you can think of that applies. As I've said before, tension and release is an important concept to music, and even subtle applications of it can give some extra spiciness for listeners. Secondly, I'd like to talk more about why this riff grooves so well to an average listener despite being such an odd time signature. To understand this, we need to go back to the dotted quarter note. So what is a dotted quarter note? It is simply a quarter note plus an eighth note, or 3/8 notes. Now why does this matter in this context? Well, let's take a look at the time signature of the riff again, 15/8. If we were to play this riff in groupings of 2, we'd end up running into a problem at the end of the measure with a lonely 1, separated from the rest of the pairs of 2. We get this disorienting kind of groove in Self-Immolate during the verses, where the drums play a kick-snare pattern that alternates the snare kick every other measure, thus resolving every 2 measures. However, when we instead focus on the groupings of 3, the 15/8 measure nicely divides into 5 dotted quarter notes that give us a triplet kind of feel that almost foreshadows another doom metal-esque track like that of Superbug. Of course, that is not the case here, but it does give that vibe to an extent. Getting back on track with the 5 dotted quarter notes, let's talk about the significance of the dotted quarter notes themselves. Sure, they do divide into smaller subdivisions, but both numbers involved in this are odd, so why does it work? Well, the guitar is playing 5 notes spanning over every 3 beats. We still have odd numbers, just simpler ones. In terms of grooves, let's focus on the 3 for now, because 5 is definitely not a common number of beats people find danceable in any way. This is a discussion for another time, but 3-beat measures generally get the pass, at least in our culture, that other time signatures do not. We can go back to the past and look at waltz, or even the insane popularity of the triplet flow, as examples of this. In this particular instance, the dotted quarter note emphasis that the guitar brings us gives us more of a chilled, slowed down groove that contrasts the majority of the music on this album, as well as the drums in this intro. It alternates between landing on the beat and filling in the gaps between the beats, giving it a looser feel that doesn't come off as being locked in the groove of the drums as much. As for the 5, I wouldn't say it helps in the grooviness of the intro on its own, but it does give an interesting, slightly odd feel that works in harmony with the 3 and 15. Anyways, I think that thoroughly covers the first 10 seconds of the song. Let's move on before I start analyzing the difference in milliseconds between the cymbals. Stu hits us with the title of the song with an energetic vocal, signifying this isn't going to be the slower paced, doomish idea that was suggested in the beginning. It is at this point where the tone for the song is truly set. This measure is in 7/4, which adds to the feeling of being thrown off, throwing us off again with an intense 4/4 section, with 8th note drums playing the thrash kick snare pattern, along with wailing guitars panned wide, before throwing us into the extremely chaotic and disorienting metric modulation in the rest of the intro. There's a lot to unpack here, so I'm just going to take this one by one with each time signature change. This chaotic portion of the instrumental begins with 2 measures of 9/8. During these 2 measures, we get the wide chugging guitar riff that is featured in the verse, along with the double time kick snare pattern expected within thrash. Due to the odd time of the section and the 1-2 groupings of the drums, the kick ends up being syncopated on the second measure, which I'll discuss more in the analysis of the verse. Following these measures of 9/8, we get a quick measure of 3/4 that serves as a transition into the 7/4 measures that will follow. There's a couple reasons why this transition is important to the section. For one, it uses a subdivision common to both meters. The connection between 3 and 9 is obvious, but the reason it works so well with the 7 is that the 7/4 riff of this song divides the meter into 4 beats followed by 3 beats at the end. The second reason comes with the riff and the drums themselves. The 3/4 measure is played as if it were the 7/4 measure's last 3 beats only. The riff is about the same, and the drums switch from the double time kick snare pattern to simply emphasizing the quarter notes. With these common traits that link a division of 9 with 7, the band is able to effectively transition time signatures with a sense of purpose to it. The section ends on another 7/4 measure, using the last 6/8 of the measure to introduce a higher pitched guitar part before throwing us right into the verse. So what is the point of all this metric modulation? Why, thank you for asking. Please allow me to respond to the words I put in your mouth. To put it shortly, chaos. This introduction keeps the listener on their toes with the high energy pace of the instrumentation, along with the disorienting time signature changes. However, there is another function we should consider with this section that deals a bit less with rhythm and more with song structure. Although at first the combination of riffs and time signatures seems rather random, as we dissect the song, it becomes clear that the introduction has given us pieces from every major section, all condensed in a way that relate to each other within this instrumental section. I believe this is a notable aspect of the song structure that could easily be overlooked. From the beginning of the song to the point we've reached, we've been introduced to the riffs featured in the verses, along with pieces of the chorus. By finding a way to connect these different odd time signature sections together, the metric modulation within the song has a sense of purpose. It isn't simply random changes. The verse sets off with a chaotic 9/8 rhythm similar to that of Self-Immolate, with the guitars setting the downbeats, while the drums alternate the kick and snare's placement on each meter. Stu's vocals simply ride the guitar riff, which is a common practice in many of King Gizzard's songs. The measures can be divided into 4/8 followed by 5/8, which gives the listener a feeling of fast to slow, only adding to the chaotic, uncontained nature of this song. The riff and Stu's vocals do this by emphasizing the first 3/8 of the 2 subdivisions. The first 4/8 of the measure has Stu and the guitar playing straight 8th notes for the first 3 beats, following it by an 8th note rest. The second half of the measure, with the 5/8, gives the measures an asymmetrical feeling by following this 3/8 by a 2/8 note rest. But what does this do for the listener? Ultimately, it contributes to the hectic feeling of the song. The asymmetrical division of the meters creates a bit of a lopsided feeling that makes the rhythm hard to follow for new listeners. In my experience, just an extra 8th note on the rest made this song truly chaotic for me upon my first listen. The rhythm was really hard to keep up with and count to. There's really something about it that keeps you on your toes, which I find exciting. We get a short meter of 3/4 here, shifting the pace and feel a bit between the end of the verse and the start of the pre-chorus. However, this transition is not random, it plays into the pre-chorus, which I'll get back to in the next section. This pre-chorus can be broken down multiple ways. You could consider it as 2 measures of 4/4 followed by 7/4, but that wouldn't be the best way to go about this in my opinion. I personally feel it as 3 measures of 8/8 followed by 3/4, but an easier way to contextualize the measures to each other is 3 measures of 4/4 followed by a measure of 3/4. Ultimately though, it can be felt in any of these 3 ways. Moving on to what I said before about the transitional 3/4 measure between the verse and the pre-chorus, we see here how it comes back at the end of each 4-bar sequence. However, this was not only foreshadowed in this transition, but also in the introduction to the song. The section ends on another 3/4 measure, transitioning us into the chorus of the song, which has 2 sections I'm going to break down. Before I talk about the divisions of the time and its context in the song, just keep in mind this section is in 7/4. Breaking this down, however, we have a feel that alternates from 4/4 to 3/4. We have a cool call and response between Stu and the lick and the last 3 quarter notes of each measure, which helps to break the bars down into halves and have a push and pull effect. The 4/4 section of each bar is actually a modification of the riff used during the verses, which adds another layer to the interconnected nature of this song. The 3/4 section of the bars also connects back to the pre-chorus's 3/4 measures at the end of each section. By creating a commonality between sections of a song, one can create change in a smooth way that doesn't completely disturb the listener. However, these 3/4 sections of each meter take that feel and introduce something new yet old. The 3/4 lick played on the guitar is one distinct to the chorus, but yet again foreshadowed earlier on in the intro of the song. This gives us a little bit of familiarity while it's still feeling fresh now that it's fleshed out a bit more, which again relates to the commonality. In a chaotic song like this, with a fast tempo and lots of metric modulation going on, establishing common ground between sections is essential for a smooth flow. Finally, the release we've been waiting for after all this build-up. The 15/8 riff we heard at the beginning of the song has come back full force. Dividing each measure into 5 dotted quarter notes, we get a smooth take on a rather odd time signature, which I found interesting. American football has used a similar technique in their song Every Wave to Ever Rise, where the guitar pan to the right plays 5 groupings of 3/8 per measure, creating a well-divided measure of 15/8 that doesn't feel all that odd. Making sense of a time signature like 15/8 requires some craftsmanship because it can easily turn into a lopsided 4/4 that sounds like it's skipping part of a beat if not thought out well. But King Gizzard makes it sound effortless, giving somewhat of a 2/3 polyrhythmic feel due to the quarter note groove and the dotted quarter note feel working together. Although the measure may be divided into an odd 5, we tend to enjoy the ratio of 2:3 or 3:2, whether it be in rhythm or harmony, which gives a consonant characteristic to this rhythmic dissonance. Finally, the chorus ends on a 7/4 measure of leaving the song able to be picked up from any point or section. The song picks up similarly to how the intro did, following the Venusian 1 chant with the intense 4/4 section that follows it, still featuring the wailing guitars. After the first 4 measures of the 8th note kick snare pattern, the kick turns into a rumbling 16th note double bass groove under the snare, which continues to play every other 8th note. Finally, we get 4 measures of the bass shredding a fast 9/8 groove, transitioning back into the second verse. From here, the verse, pre-chorus, and chorus do the same as they did the first time around, so I won't bother repeating the analysis I already gave for them. The groove of 15 has come back yet again, though this time the emphasis is truly a feel of 15/4 on top of the 15/8, taking 2 measures to resolve. There is a 5-syllable Venusian 1 chant dividing the measure into dotted half notes, while the dotted quarter note riff plays underneath it. There is a cool juxtaposition between the two, where the chant lands on the 1-3-5 and then the 2-4 of the guitar riff underneath, which helps to emphasize the quarter note dominance in the measure, since it is not resolved by the end of the 8th note measure, giving the section a more laid-back feel than the rest of the song. Stu's vocals enter as well as the kick and snare, bringing more of that groovy 2-3 polyrhythmic feeling into the chorus. On top of this, the riff and chant continue to juxtapose and support one another, giving this section a fully crowded yet satisfying climax to the song. It doesn't feel like it needs to go anywhere, for it has arrived where it needs to. Following this, the song ends on a fast-paced 4/4 groove, followed by the iconic "There Is One Planet V." I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that watches these videos and hits like or subscribes. I really appreciate it, the fact that I've gotten 30 subscribers off of about 2 videos. It's pretty good to me. I didn't phrase that very well, but really, I do appreciate it, y'all. And if you're new to these videos, please consider liking and subscribing, and there will be more future content, not in the past. Thank you.